Can I invite the three panelists to come up? Let's give a hand to Mr. Anthony Tan, Ms. Mel, and Inche Afandi.
Aku dulu. Jalan, 1, 2, 3. Aduh.
Okay, this is a very important session because it sets the tone for the conference over today and tomorrow. It's entitled Paving the Way, Setting the Stage for Sustainable Futures. Because overall this conference has 2 panels, 9 sessions, and 36 papers. It's actually quite a heavy conference. I see many of you are fairly young researchers, so you can cope through the pressure of 36 presentations. But setting the stage on this theme provides us an overview to the critical issues. So we are approaching this first panel from 3 dimensions. The first 2 are based on mapping reports. Now, Ken, in his presentation on the book, talked about storytelling. Now, among academics and researchers, we have questions on methodology because your findings, according to if you are an economist, or if you are a political scientist, or if you are a sociologist, if you are a psychologist, if you are an anthropologist, there is a slight difference in the methodology of data gathering and analysis. And if you are an environmentalist, I'm not sure what, so whether you are science-based, social science-based, researchers differ in methodologies and conclusions. Now, the first 2 presentations bring very much to heart from findings through focus group discussions and field visits, largely the work of APPGM on the ground. And the third presentation takes a more macro look on the issues, very comprehensive, I think 36 slides. So we'll see timing-wise, because we're already 20 minutes behind time. 36 slides, very comprehensive, with an academic review, but also civil society perspective, broader than the mapping reports, which are very focused to our own methodology and finding. That's the background to today. So constantly in a conference like this, if you want to analyze not just the findings and recommendations, but look at the methodology. Is the methodology storytelling? It's a valid methodology. Is the methodology a commentary? Is the methodology a research paper that has quantitative or qualitative research methods? We want to improve data collection, data analysis, as well as the conclusions. So we are not just here enjoying kuching. We are here on a serious business, but you got time to enjoy. Now, of course, all of us think the group that went to Cebu, I are so sad for them, they were stranded. I see it as Cebu is a nice place to visit as well. Unfortunately, they couldn't go out to the town because Cebu has very good makan, fuchao food, if you want to try. But here we have 3 panelists, key people But we have a timekeeper. Who's the timekeeper? Okay. Timekeeper will ring, what, twice or only once? 10 minutes, and we are narrowing to 15 minutes all. Plus, then we have Q&A. We will try and complete within time, if not latest 11:30 lah, so we can catch up the time. Now, the three panelists need no introduction. Mr. Anthony Tan has removed his mask so we can see his face. Anthony has a long experience in environment. Anthony worked with, I would feel, the greatest and continuing to be the environmentalist activist, Mr. Gurmeet Singh. And in the last few years, he's working with this kind of a Singh, also with the beard, also big size, but not a Punjabi. Yeah? But Gurmeet is the expert activist, and Anthony now works on a number of areas, including admin finance, but his passion is in environment and sustainability. The second panelist, she already spoke to us. Mel is from Sarawak, homegrown, reflecting from a Sarawak perspective, and also drawing from social science and the mapping. And of course, our third speaker, also famous and well-known, he is representing the Malaysian CSO-SDG Alliance. I must say he was a staff, tapi he cabut from us to ISIS Malaysia, and now is a fellow there focusing on climate, environment, and energy. So let's give a hand to the three panelists, and I pass the time now to Mr. Anthony Tan.
Thank you, Dr. Denison. Yeah, those are my slides. So, when we talk about the environment, what do you think is the environment? Next, please. Next. So, usually when you hear the word environment, more often than not, we look at the natural environment. The song "What a Wonderful World" by Louis Armstrong comes to mind. Trees of green, red roses too. The natural environment consists of the things you can see out there in nature. These, of course, include flora, plants, fauna, animals and insects, microbes, even whatever I've caught, bacteria, virus, forests, hills, mountains, rivers, oceans, and clouds, and even the air. However, beyond the natural environment, next, you have the built environment. And the built environment covers all kinds of human-made creations, such as buildings. These include houses, schools, factories, towns and cities, infrastructure, roads, rail, bridges, dams, drains, electricity poles, airports, vehicles and other man-made creations that are movable. How many of you do not have one of these? No hands coming up, huh? Because this is part of the built environment. All of these things don't suddenly appear out of nowhere. Somebody has to make it. But what people are probably not aware is that the environment is affected by social and economic activities of humans. It is important to understand that the use or abuse of the environment is a governance issue, SDG 16. As we talk about the environment, we cannot escape from talking about different forms of pollution and contamination that affects the environment. Air pollution, water pollution, ground pollution, sound pollution. Most, if not all, of these causes of pollution come from the built environment, and as a result of the built environment or destruction of the natural environment. The issue of governance and pollution brings us to this important concept of trustee, steward, or for those of you in the audience who are from the Muslim faith Khalifa. To be a successful steward, you have to be responsible over other people's property and ensure their happiness without cheating, but respect them while managing and taking orders from other people. The steward is not the owner. The steward is only a manager. The steward must be trusted and not misuse their authority. So who is the steward in the Sarawak region whose birthday is being celebrated? The TYT. But in form of government, who is the steward for Sarawak region? Premier. So there are different levels of stewardship. Unfortunately, becoming a good and successful steward is very difficult indeed. It means a person has to be unselfish on top of being trustworthy with matters big and small alike. Imagine if there was no illegal dumping of chemicals into rivers. Better still, imagine if people stop open burning that leads to haze. So who is the steward in your organization? So in APPGM-SDG Secretariat, what's his name? Denison Jayasooria. Okay. That means the rest of them are not sure. And how do you see your role as a steward in your own organization and even in your own home? Now, I used to show this when I ask people about sustainable development. If you have a choice, would you like to live in a city which is on the left or a city on the right? How many would love to live in a city on the right? With lots of cars, tall buildings, traffic jam, forced to. Okay? But if you have a choice to go to somewhere where it is, you can go back for lunch, have a short nap, leave the office by 4:45, have coffee, and then reach your home by 6 and have dinner. Coaching. Okay? Okay, we come to the issue mapping. The APPGM-SDG was formed in 2019 under the Office of the Speaker of Dewan Rakyat. For your information, the Malaysian Parliament currently has 222 parliamentary constituencies spread over Semenanjung, Sabah and Sarawak. I call this the 3S system. I believe that Sabah, Sarawak are going to request for 1/3. Let's see what happens. The APPGM-SDG committee has 12 members, 9 from Dewan Rakyat, 3 senators, and the committee is supported by the secretariat comprising of professionals that come from research, management, and financial disciplines. The APPGM-SDG Constituency Coordination Unit has completed 115 issue mapping exercises in parliamentary constituencies since 2020. So 10 in 2020, 20 in 2021, 27 in 2022, 28 in 2023, and another 30 were completed this year. We are happy to report that we have covered the constituencies of the current Prime Minister and 2 of his immediate predecessors. One of them actually cornered Dr. Denison and asked him to come over to Bera in 1 week's time. He managed to negotiate and went there 2 weeks after that. It is important to note that the members of Parliament join the APPGM program on a volunteer basis. The process can sometimes be difficult and continues with the inception meeting with the Member of Parliament along with the officers based on the information gathered from this inception meeting and other meetings with civil society groups to identify the places to visit and community groups to interview. There have been some rare cases where the researchers have visited communities that have been overlooked during the inception meeting. The issue mapping exercise includes a site visit to the parliamentary constituency. This may take between 3 to 7 days, depending on the accessibility or size of the locality. During the issue mapping, the research team conducts focus group discussions or FGDs with a variety of community groups which include youth, single mothers, fathers, persons with disabilities, senior citizens, orang asli, orang asal, and other minority groups. After the issue mapping exercise has been completed, the research team will compile the many issues raised. This could be from as few as 60 to as many as 120 separate items into 3 broad categories covering social, economic, and environment. These issues are then presented to the Member of Parliament to decide which 3 or 4 are the ones they wish to address, with a limited allocation of 120,000 grant in total. So, having explained the issue mapping process and how the projects are decided, proposals are accepted to resolve the issues. Proposals go through a series of vetting, starting with an initial review by a member of the solutions team, 2 independent assessors, the heads of constituency and finance departments, before they are presented to the APPGM-SDG committee for their approval. A quorum of 3 members of the committee is required. Now, MySDG Center for Social Inclusion, I call them CSI, Crime Scene Investigators. It's a joke, but never mind if you don't laugh. The research think tank of APPGM-SDG identified 6 major environmental issues based on the issue mapping reports from 85 site visits conducted between 2020 and 2023. These issues became the points of discussion for 2 rounds of discussions held with parliamentarians and representatives from government agencies. These include risk management of flood disasters, geological and climate change dangers, environmental pollution, solid waste management, natural resources and sanitation, human-wildlife conflicts. Of these 6 issues listed, probably only item 4 seems to be the one that can be tackled with the limited funding of 40,000 ringgit per project. Unsurprisingly, items 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 either require heavy investment in public infrastructure or review and drastic change in government policy and legislation. Infrastructure projects and policy change require intervention at federal, state, or local authority level. Having stated this, the cost of solid waste collection and disposal, this includes transportation plus the tipping fees at the landfill, in Malaysia averages between 25% to 50% of total fees and taxes collected by local authorities. So for every 1 ringgit you pay in tax to the local authority, 50 cents, up to 50 cents can go to the moving of solid waste alone. Now, when you compare this to a developed country like Japan, there it comes to a maximum of only 10%. So imagine the amount of money that cannot go to development. Coming to the solution projects, a majority or 65% of APPGM's funding, which originates from the Ministry of Finance, goes towards financing community-based micro projects. Each micro project comes under the umbrella of social, economic, and or environment. More than 1,000 of such micro projects have been approved by the APPGM-SDG committee since 2020, and these solutions are carried out by solution providers who come from a variety of registration backgrounds that include... Oh. Okay, sorry. Register of Societies, Register of Youth, Suruhanjaya Syarikat Malaysia, Social Enterprises. A majority, sorry. So of these, you have 33 projects are related to environmental initiatives, 22 in Semenanjung, 6 in Sabah, and 5 in Sarawak. Now I'm going to go through this very fast because I have less than 3 minutes. Speed read. This is to show that Dr. Denison knows that we take a lot of photographs and that activities are going on. I'll just come to the gaps now. We had 2 roundtable discussions in Parliament organized by MySDG Centre for Social Inclusion this year. The first RTD was with members of Parliament, the second involved representatives of government agencies together with the MPs. Through this RTD, some headway was achieved, but at the same time, some gaps emerged. Number 1, lack of understanding by members of Parliament of acts and regulations that exist, which are very old laws, such as the Environmental Quality Act, EQA 1974. This is 50 years old. They are also very much overdue to be revamped. Newer members of Parliament seem not familiar with the Solid Waste Management Act, Act 673, which has been adopted only by half of the state governments. Secondly, there's a lack of comprehension by members of federal legislature of the jurisdiction of government agencies and their bidang kuasa provided by the law. Thirdly, although civil servants are well versed with the acts, enactments, ordinances, and regulations that govern their work, they seem to be overly zealous in fulfilling the obligations of these laws to the point the delivery of services to the rakyat has become a second thought. It was observed that some government officers, fourthly, the elected members of Parliament seem to be caught in a catch-22 situation whereby the rakyat look to them to resolve ground issues, but legislation has not kept up with the speed of technological change, and still pending Climate Change Act is one case of point. And the way forward, first, it would be great to have more members of Parliament involved in future FGDs organized by CSI, held in Parliament. APPGM-SDG has a wealth of data that is being processed into articles, papers, and reports. All our publications are available online and for public consumption. Next, civil servants need to be empowered to question the reliability of legislation that are old. The half-century-old EQA 1974 is a valid example. Air pollution readings only need to be reported physically once a year. With today's advanced technology, continuous data gathering, monitoring, and reporting can be done. Much needs to be done to resolve the already identified environmental issues. A new initiative called Policy Solutions Project was started earlier this year with special funding from Ministry of Finance channeled through Yayasan Hazanah. We hope that with these 55 parliamentary constituencies being piloted, the success of this project will spur authorities to replicate this effort in the other 167 parliamentary constituencies in Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anthony. I think he brought very clearly the 6 key mapping issues. He cepat through the 20 micro projects, but I think you'll get a chance to review it. The policy gaps are interesting, and finally his recommendations. I think it sets the stage for where we are and how important environment is to the landscape, but how equipped are we in addressing them? And you're talking of policymakers and knowledge of legislation that is archaic, 1950s, means it's still colonial based, not really contemporary. Now, let me pass the time to Mel to draw more closely to Sarawak concerns and issues. Let's give her a hand.
Hello. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm more comfortable down here.
Not so comfortable up here. Only lady.
I can walk around here. So, anyways, we have heard from the whole APPGM ecosystem about how things are done within the institution, in the organization itself, and within the parliamentary as well. So right now, I would like to bring you all closer to home, and our experience during our issue mapping exercise throughout Sarawak. So I have my Sarawakian team as well with me here. So we have a regional office in Sarawak. So Dr. Eva is our policy officer, and we have Corinne as well as our additional researcher this year. But what I would like to go through with you all today is, it's so hard. Okay. The Sarawak experience. Okay, so as an indigenous person myself, although I'm city-grown actually, historically we know that the indigenous community in Sarawak has been a riverine society. So I can list all of the indigenous groups in Sarawak, like the Ibans, like the Kayans, the Kenya, the Berawan, the you know what, I'm going to finish my 15 minutes quota if I keep on listing this. So majority of us are historically a riverine society. So I think that's the kind of category that even us in APPGM has left out a little bit, looking into the livelihood rather than looking into their ethnic composition. So this is one of my favorite quote from two of my favorite anthropologists actually, from Jayasooria and Ishikawa. So rivers are lifelines to local communities and support social connectivity. Riverine networks provide modes of transport, facilitate trade activities, and influence migration, settlement patterns, and kin relations. This sounded something like from the 1800s, right? But actually it's still going on today. Not so much, because we have roads now, so we don't really depend on the rivers as our mode of transportation, but there are still communities who are heavily dependent on their rivers as well. So you know where I'm going right now, right? I'm going to talk a little bit in depth about river, sort of. So this year, APPGM-SDG Sarawak has particularly focused on the riverine communities. We were given, this year we were placed in Muka, which is, I think every Sarawakian here, you know where Muka is, right? So under the parliamentary map, Muka consists of Balingan, Balingan, Muka itself, Dalat, Oyak, Telian, basically the whole thing lah. So, and then we went to Sibuti as well. So Sibuti is basically Bekenu, Nia, Lamber. And then we also went to Mas Gading, which is Lundu and Bau. So big areas that we've been to this year. And these communities are integral to Sarawak's cultural and economic fabric, and addressing their environmental issues and concern alone is insufficient without acknowledging their realities of their daily lives. So if we speak about environment, we can't just ignore about their daily lives, because to this community, their environment is important to support their daily life as well. So it's not just about the ecosystems, but it's about us. It's about everyone who are participating within their life rituals, everyday life rituals. So this presentation, again, here is to highlight the shifting environment and the livelihoods of this. Okay, actually, it's not 3 riverine communities. I thought I wanted to start with 3, but I ended up going into 6, if I'm not mistaken. Like I said just now, the 3 parliamentary constituencies is Muka, Sibuti, and Mas Gading. So I would like to begin with the Melanau of Oyak and the Iban of Balingan. So this is in Muka. Love this place. So I didn't have a lot of photos with me right now. So I sort of like used these photos of Prof and James going around the Sego farm of our SP. So as you can see, Sego is a big big component of the livelihoods of the Melanau and Muka, but also for the Iban in Balingan as well. And as you can see on this side, these are all the, sorry for the blur photos, but these are all the sago logs that are being drifted, not drifted, but kept in the water to maintain this freshness. So, and then the second one that I'm going to talk about is also, the Melanau of Kuala Bukam and the Iban of Niah. So this is in Sibuti. As you can see here, I'm going to speak a little bit about their fishers community as well. And also the Iban and Bidayu of Lundu. So these are the inland fisher communities in Lundu here. So these communities are basically traditional fishers, but are also landowners. It's a very, very common thing in Sarawak, engaging in both fishing and farming activities. So this blend of livelihoods reflects the typical daily life for the riverine communities of Sarawak. Today, monocropping has become their lifeline on top of fisheries activities, shaping their economic survival. So I would like to start with a disclaimer as well that I'm not here to critique the monocropping industry, but rather to provide a balanced mediation between the people, development, and their environment. So in line with this perspective, I would also like to reiterate that as much as there are so many critiques on monocropping from international bodies, from local bodies as well, but the development of this agricultural system has enabled these communities to afford sending their children to universities, improving their livelihoods and gaining access to private healthcare, among other benefits. So we cannot just stop at this thing is bad. So there's always another things that are, other nuances as well at play within these daily lives of these communities. So I would like to touch a little bit about cash cropping because monocropping has very, very close relation with cash cropping. So it was introduced to Sarawak in the early 1880s. It has been in Sarawak for such a long time, starting with coffee plantation. Coffee plant, which is brought by Charles Brooke. Every Sarawakian know about the Brooke history. So they started cash cropping with coffee. And information that I found when I did my coffee research years ago is documented in the Brooke archive. So around the same period, oil palm plant was also introduced to the region. Initially by the early Catholic missionaries in Kanawit and later expanded by the Anglican priests. So it's interesting that these religious bodies, religious institutions as well, introduce these plants. But I'm not sure whether the introduction is to aim as it as a cash crop, but it's an introduction like this is an interesting plant that can supply oil to you guys, that's it. During the 1960s, commercial cultivation of oil palm was revitalized by the Sarawak Land Development Board. This information, I got it from a report by Uncle Sidi Munan. I think a lot of you guys here as well are familiar with Sidi Munan as well. So he's the former secretary for Sarawak Land Development Board, and he had this article written in the Borneo Post in 2018. Is to transform the life of local agrarians, local smallholder communities. So I don't like to use the word case study in this case because for me, these communities are not just a study. But what I would like to center here is that this is their lived realities. So let me go with this. I did not include their names due to ethical considerations, but these are the things that I've heard and I've learned from the community when we were on the ground. Iniban, tanah kami dito nadai uliah ditanam ngau uliah bukai, nadai utai bukai tang semina, sawit and mulong. So it means nothing else can grow on our land but oil palm and sago palm. So this is an environmental concern. This is in Balingan, where the local communities have ceased the cultivation of paddy. So as you know, paddy is an important cultural substance as well in the life of indigenous communities in Sarawak as well, right? Of course, you're quite familiar with this. Okay. So, a lot of these communities, they actually transition instead to oil palm production. And there's a reason for that though. It was because of the agronomic suitability of their land. Their land no longer can be planted, paddy can no longer be planted on their land. So they had to shift to oil palm plantation. So they had to favor the palm-based crop like oil palm and sago palm. Again, this is in relation for their livelihood needs. Okay, I know I have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to be very, very fast. So, and then you have this other community that says, when they depend too much on sago palm as well, they do not have the power or the agency to actually how do you call it? Like they say, right? The price of to control the price of the sago palm itself. So this has been a challenge for them to unregulated market price for sago, for example. So some of them actually shift to oil palm as well because it's more stable for them. So for the Melanau of Kuala Bakam and Iban of Nia, they were saying as well, we cannot farm. Even though we've been here for 6 generations, we were told we are not the landowners. We were told we are squatters. We need to move. So again, you have these communities who are having issues like land tenure issues as well. While you have communities that can do all of these practices, there are communities that can't even participate within this market economy system. So yeah. So another community was saying that they have issues with polluted river as well. So there's a lot of rubbish in that area when we went to. Obviously, you can see it. And then, so that contributes to the shrinking fish populations as well. So the health of the river system itself is declining. And then it causes, and development around the areas are also causing physical changes to the landscape. And this is what Anthony said just now about built environment as well, being part of our important environmental system. And it reflects a broader problem though. It's not just monocropping, it's not just changes of land structure, land tenure, but then you see, you have all this construction development around this community as well. And they always think that, there is this sentiment that, you know, when you have this kind of development around them, they were not consulted by the consultants or the persons that are working on the agencies that are working on the development. So we have more here. I have more stories to tell here, but I'm running out of time. So let's go to Lunduk for a while. So this is around Lunduk community as well. So they sometimes release the meal waste, I forgot waste, to the river twice a year. So a lot of the fishers communities in Lunduk as well, they can't even do fishing anymore because of the reduction in aquatic life, but also at the same time they had issues with wildlife crises as well. And in the end, they had to switch to depending on monocropping system as well, again, for their livelihoods needs. Okay, so my reflection in this is that these communities acknowledge that economic factors have necessitated a shift in their practices to integrate with the broader market economy. Concurrently, they admit to a significant loss, specifically the erosion of both physical spaces and temporal capacity required to sustain their traditional agricultural practices such as rice and paddy farming. So the younger ones, they have lost these skills to plant paddy because everyone is shifting into the market economy right now. So my observation is also, if we want to talk about environment, it's a very complex issue. It's not just something that, you know, like, oh, monocropping is bad, oh, this is bad. But, you know, it's a lot of issues that revolves around it as well. The gap here is that high-level policy reforms, while they're essential, they must deeply involve the grassroots communities in identifying their needs. APPGM-SDG has long championed the principle that communities inherently know how to address their challenges. This is from our work during our solution project. So we asked the community, what can we do if you have this amount of money? What can you solve? What kind of problem can you solve? So I think now it may be the time to elevate their involvement, not just on that level, but on a higher levels of this policy discussion. acknowledging their crucial role in advancing the SDG as well. Policies that fail to recognize and incorporate grassroots knowledge inevitably risk marginalizing the very people that they aim to support. Thus, integrating local insights into the broader policy framework is not just beneficial, but it's a sustainable solution because the community actually knows what they want and what they are going to do for the next 10 or 20 years or 30 years of their life. So, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, Mel. Now, it's very interesting as we hear Mel. Mel brings into the equation of our discussion importance of rivers, lands, and people, especially indigenous people's affinity to land. So environment is not just to be studied as a technical, scientific sort of issue, but must be seen from the livelihood or people's dimension. And that is important in the contestation on land ownership, on rivers. She also brought in another dimension, which is the heart of conflict, which is the market economy. So what takes precedence? Is it people? Is it the economy? And is the consideration for higher growth over people, over the environment, and so forth? So look at that. Now, I also want to advise, one more minute. All of you who are making presentations afterwards, 36 of you, all of us who have done, I've been an academic as well, we are first told 40 minutes. When you arrive at the conference, they tell you 20 minutes. When you get on the stage, sometimes they tell you only got 5 minutes or 7 minutes. So be careful. You have a lot of things like Mel and Anthony and all. And I'm sure Afandi got 35 slides. We'll give him 20 minutes. Okay, give him 20 minutes. But think of what is it that you want to tell this conference from all your findings. And then your papers are more comprehensive. If you have that in mind, you won't feel so disappointed. I know Mel had so much more to tell, and Anthony as well, but we are constrained with time. Afandi is a close friend. I read his slides. I think 20 minutes boleh lah. We give him 20 minutes, okay, because not that I'm marginalizing the other two. Okay, over to Afandi, because he's setting a much broader context to the discussion.
Hello. All right. Okay, that's my slide. Thank you, Datuk Denison. Assalamualaikum, selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera semua. First of all, thank you to APPGM-SDG for inviting me to be here. Just now you heard a lot about the local context and solutions, but I will speak more about the interventions needed at the policy and system level. It's a bit dry and boring, I would say, but still rooted from the CSO perspective. Actually, I wear a few hats, but today I am representing the CSO-SDG Alliance, which most of you are very familiar with and part of the Alliance as well. And also we have Sarawak and Sabah chapter of the Alliance, and I believe some of the members are here. I will speak in three parts. First is the what, which is the current state of play. Second is why these issues happen from the CSO perspective. And lastly, the how, which is the next steps that we should take based on what CSO proposed. So I will just spend the first few minutes on the first part. To start with, we know that our country is growing fast, and recently World Bank announced that we will reach high income status before 2030. And our population is expected to increase by 11 million people from 24 million now to 46 million by 2050. And what does 11 million people mean? That will definitely means more resource consumption, more material expansion in terms of new houses, infrastructure, energy facilities, food production, which will intensify competition for land. But we also have to remember that our population is not evenly distributed. Over 77% of Malaysians live in urban areas, and that will increase in the future, and 31% live in coastal area. So that means different sets of people will be concentrated and bring different sets of exposure and vulnerabilities to climate change, disaster, and environmental risks. And that also comes with increased demand for vehicles, water, food, and electric, as well as waste production. But our ongoing pursuit to be a developed nation have resulted in us losing significant chunk of our natural heritage in our forests, mainly driven by agriculture and urban expansion. While reforestation has been carried out by some by government in some areas, we still have lost some very critical landscape, such as wildlife corridors and tiger habitats. And we have already lost our rhinoceros, and the Malayan tiger and sladang might follow suit. And we know how much Malaysians love their seafood. We consume probably the biggest seafood in Asia right now, but our fish stock has declined by nearly 90% since the 60s, mainly due to overfishing, trawling, but also loss of mangrove and coral reefs, which is the breeding ground for fish. But this pattern of overconsumption is not unique to Malaysia. It happens across the globe, especially in developed countries. If everyone were to consume at the rate of the trend promoted by the American dream, a model fueled by economic capitalist systems, each country would need at least 5 more Earth to sustain such demands. And this overconsumption has resulted in us reaching several planetary boundaries, which is defined as the environmental limits that humanity can safely operate. And of the 9 boundaries, I think 6 have been breached so far, that really put the Earth's stability at risk. And this imbalance has resulted in environmental and climate risks increasingly emerge as a top global risk over the years, according to the World Economic Forum, partly also due to inaction of the global climate action. And the world is already warmed by 1.2 degrees C, and we're heading to 2.4 degrees C warming by the end of century, based on the current policies right now. And we've seen these impacts manifested in Malaysia, also combined with poor planning that resulted in increased disaster risks, especially flood. And we've seen yesterday there's multiple spots of flash flood in Kuching as well. And it's not just flooding or extreme weather, but also slow onset events such as sea level rise. Right? We know more than 30% of population live in coastal area, but we also have strategic infrastructure such as power plants, airports, ports, a jetty, and currently we don't have a holistic plan on what to do yet. So this map here is from the National Coastal Physical Plan. I think for Sabah Sarawak, I think the state government is doing similar exercise to map the vulnerable areas of coastal area. So ultimately, these are just to establish that our natural environment and biosphere, which provide essential foundation for sustaining our economies and achieving our SDGs, is at risk. So that's just an introduction to the state of play at both the global and national level. Now I go to why the issues are happening from the CSO perspective. So what I will present is based on the 2023 policy brief that the CSO-SDG Alliance collectively produced from the process that started from last year, which contained the insights, issues, and recommendations from the CSO perspective. And this policy brief was produced with many steps, process before the forum and after the forum, involving various parties and inputs from a lot of CSOs. So the method is very qualitative and very FGD focused. So actually the forum dived into 7 thematic areas involving education, environment, governance, and we also draw out 6 cost-cutting issues. I don't think I can go through all of it, but I'll just focus issues on that's highly material to the environment, as well as some intersections with the other issues as well. So before we start, I think it's worthwhile to highlight that environmental group of CSOs identify quite several grassroots issues from their work and engagement with communities across the country, but it mainly is due to unchecked development that cause water scarcity, pollution, waste issues, and so forth. So there's a lot of commonalities here with what Melissa and Anthony present just now. And for most of these sectors, governance is the biggest issue overall. And for the environment sector, what they say so feel is really the ineffective governance stem from weak public sector in terms of capacity, enforcement, resource, policies, combined with an unrestrained free market that has led to unchecked development that impact ecosystem and communities. So based on their CSO input, deforestation has been the biggest issue, which increased flood and landslide risk, decrease in food and resource for indigenous and local communities. Even though we have a lot of nice policies such as environmental sensitive area framework that does translate from the national physical plan to local plan and structure plan, but it's not been implemented well. There are also other issues such as corruption, one-dimensional definition of poverty, and inadequate participation of communities in decision-making and policy process, which contribute to overall weak environment governance. And I want to highlight one root cause related to weak governance, which is the ongoing state government dependence on land and forest for their revenue. So for many states, forests and land accounts for a very large portion of their revenue, such as premium and cess from land such as oil palm, timber, as well as mining, and even a land reclamation where a state earns direct revenue. Of course, this also includes other factors such as market demand and maybe more broader systemic issues such as rent seeking and lobbying. But again, I think the narrow revenue stream is what forcing the government to clear more land. And I think some of you have seen this before, which demonstrate how little state government actually earn compared to the federal government, just over 9%. This is old data in 2017. I have no time to compile them, but from what I gathered, the trend has not changed much, still hovering about 9 to 11%. In fact, I forgot to put the graph here. Even some private sectors such as, I think, Maiden or Maybank even earn more than Selangor or some state government. And that means there is unequal distribution of revenue and state is forced to clear more natural resource. And it's not just about revenue from stream, but there's also a number of previous incentives. We're talking about flood just now, right? So for example, we know that our forests, our river ensure clean water and supply, and also protect against flooding. But activities from states such as clear felling, hill cutting, is the one that tend to contribute to flood, as well as poor urban planning and overdevelopment. But this cost of damage is not borne by the state government. In fact, the federal government is the one that, the one spending hundreds of millions and billions of ringgit every year for flood mitigation, and the cost keep increasing every year, right? So maybe that amount could have been minimized if forests are better managed, or the federal government provide just a bit of more money for state to conserve their forests. So, but this means that state and local government have little incentive to adopt sustainable land use planning or manage integrated flood management because someone is paying for them, has no incentive to act. And another part of weak governance is related to data, which I think all of us here are researchers. We know how difficult it is to get data from the government. So there's a lack of availability and accessibility, and that hinders some of us to monitor the SDG progress and even affect decision making and poor resource allocation. And our data is often is aggregated, means you can't really tell environmental and climate impacts on specific groups such as children, women, indigenous communities, disabled community, and so forth. And again, most data are restricted. Like not all EIAs are available. Some data on forests and degazettement notice are hiding behind paywall, right? So that's limiting engagement from public, CSO in decision making and the policy process. And the biggest elephant in the room, I think Datuk Denison mentioned just now about the economic model that overlooks the consideration of both positive and negative environmental externalities. This really results from the exclusively narrow focus that we use to measure our growth based on GDP. While it's an important indicator, it really offers limited perspective, right? It offers only national income, wealth accumulation, and material growth, and it doesn't really capture true welfare. On income distribution between the rich and the poor, inequality, societal health, environmental health, which now resulted, in a mindset of growth at all costs and maximizing profit. In fact, 55% of global GDP depends on nature, but our economic system totally undervalues it. It's just expansion or growth for the sake of expansion, and we have a term for this in health, which we call cancer, right? Growth for the sake of growth and expansion. So main example from the CSOs is in Tioman in Pahang, which is state government plan to build more airports and building more resorts, bring in more tourists, but at the expense of the island carrying capacity. And if the island is not managed, then there's no revenue from tourism. And there are other cost-cutting issues such as human rights, mainly involving indigenous rights, right? Because customary land are not fully protected, and because of inconsistent and fragmented laws on forestry, natural resource and land. And Malaysia has yet to adequately implement the free prior informed consent, and even the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People in 2019 is not fully adopted by the government yet. On education, there's still lack of access to holistic environmental education, and marginalized community, which we include indigenous people, undocumented persons, non-citizens, especially children, women, elderly, person with disabilities, have no identification and currently invisible in data system, which means they have no access to basic rights, and including healthcare, which is very important as we will face more climate shocks and stress and disasters. Last, I speak about the next step and some of the CSO policy recommendations. First is on transforming governance. So the short-term action that can be done is to really provide greater access information such as open data, and even making the summary of technical reports available for layman person, especially on climate, environmental plans, and even enhancing disaggregated data. So for example, last week there was a climate change bill released from the government for consultation, but I'm pretty sure not everyone able to appreciate the data. So I think there need to be perhaps another act like the US, a Clean Language Act, where government have to communicate their policies, their legislation in a simple language that people can understand. So I think that's a very critical step. Exactly, invite all stakeholders as well. Second is promoting more community-based natural resource management, almost like a co-management with government. And there are a lot of good examples across the country in urban areas such as Bukit Kiara, in Bundu Tuhan, in Sabah, and even in Terengganu, such as Seti Wetlands, where community manage together with the government. And in long term, it's very difficult to do, but it's really to decentralize the resource planning, decision-making power, capacity, and funds. From federal to state government to address this federal-state jurisdictional dichotomy, and also means redistributing back the decision-making authority from central government to state and local level, especially restating back local elections and allowing for more localized governance, and essentially we call it the merakyatkan decision-making process. So I mentioned just now there's a lot of issues with GDP, and there is a need to move to more holistic modular development, essentially going beyond GDP. The good news is Malaysia is not starting from scratch. I think DOSM has produced various index for better measurement of welfare, such as gender gaps index, well-being index, happiness index, green economy. And it really is not easy to decouple from GDP and this capitalism-based model that we have inherited from the past. And we are a trading nation in a globalized system, but we have to start the building block somewhere, and where to start is measuring, and that's a starting point. And before we can even discuss how to integrate these indicators into planning, decision-making, budgeting, and all that. And very important for Malaysia to also start valuing nature based on our own context. And in my opinion, Malaysia should start championing this agenda, especially when we are taking the ASEAN Chairmanship next year, that we should be the first country to look at growth beyond GDP. And just some specific environmental measures. I think the most important but most difficult is to change the incentive structure for more nature and social positive growth. Not just carrot, but also stick approach. This means for policymakers to have a stronger political will to really penalize bad behavior and rewarding good behavior to various mechanisms and resource pricing and pollution pricing. I think Malaysia has started this ecological fiscal transfer to reward state government to keep their forests, but that amount is not enough, and there's so much of externalities such as flood, human-wildlife conflicts, pollution, that is not being borne by the polluters or developers, but our own taxpayers' money. So we need polluters to pay through pollution pricing or compensate for biodiversity loss and all that. market-based instruments such as carbon market. I know Dr. Ken don't like to talk about it, but it's coming, and you know, it's a source of revenue. But we really need to ensure there's a benefit sharing mechanism, and the local and indigenous communities' rights are protected, because a lot of state government are very interested in this. And we need to strengthen possible planning like environmental impact assessment, which is, you know, the participation with committees, very poor, engagement with very poor as well. Second point is to really enhance environment data and accessibility and transparency at local level, like EIA reports, local plans, to really empower communities and support participatory and evidence-based planning. And the other policy recommendations, which include recognition of environmental rights, including land rights for indigenous community, gender mainstreaming and budgeting, planning and decision making, and really enhancing education on environmental accessibility as well. So this is the reference source I have. So this policy brief really represents the civil society perspective on key issues and potential way forward, not just for government, but really for CSOs to work together with government and other partners on the proposed scope and recommendation. So this is a starting point. We have learned a lot from this, and I think the CSO will continue to learn and produce more output on this as well. I will share this slide with everyone later on. So before I end, just my reflection, and it's one key takeaway you get from all this is, we understand that empowering individuals and communities are important in the green lifestyle, disaster risk management, and climate action, environmental action. We do need a whole of society approach, but part of building resilience of communities requires addressing the deep-rooted inequality and social disadvantages that are still embedded within our society that impact certain groups. And at some stage, people can't just resilience their way out of systemic oppression, institutionalized discrimination and racism, and even barriers to meaningful participation. You can't empower community when you have living a system that actively disempower communities. And the ecological crisis and climate change is fundamentally a systemic issue that needs systemic solution. So a large part of this requires re-examining and really rethinking our economic model that is obsessed with infinite pursuit of material growth, consumption, and wealth accumulation. And that requires a very strong state, a strong government that places the importance of public goods over private goods through strong policies and regulation. So I stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Fadi, for that very comprehensive presentation. You know, as Fendi was speaking, the wealth of knowledge, experience, conviction, I was thinking, why hasn't ISIS made you a senior fellow? You know? Maybe we need to lobby. Maybe one is, he looks very young, right? So maybe like Ken, you might need to grow a beard or longer hair. Not to this one. But I thought Fendi brings to the discussion today some fundamental issues that requires us to look, and whether in your papers that you are presenting, similar issues are emerging. And I would encourage Fendi to, from slides, move to writing. Sebab MySDG Academy is very cepat in bringing the book out. So you need, I think, 2 weeks to write it up, because the book might come out. The economic model, I think Fendi brought that. What is the dominant economic model which then impacts unchecked development, deforestation, and so forth? That is the crisis, actually. What is the economic model? Is the priority making lots of money within a short span of time, sacrificing everything else? But Fendi also brought out two other important points, which didn't come out in the earlier presentation. One is the state revenue. This lopsidedness, I know Datuk was in federal government lah, tapi you are now outside. Federal government revenue and state revenue, and why the states are not protecting the forest but are depleting it for revenue is a key question. And the other is the governance. Why ineffective? Anthony's paper, I think he didn't have time to highlight all this enforcement, EIA, faulty sort of enforcement issues. Why is the state government not doing enough to be the defenders and protectors of it? I think the public good that that Fendi concluded with. So we've got from this first session the basis of the next session and to tomorrow, the 36 paper presentations, and we take it up. Now, we still have time, so I thought, why don't we give you a chance to ask your question? The mics will go to them, right? And you state your name, ask your question, if it is general or specific. Let's take all the questions, then we give a round to the panelists. Don't answer all the questions, but pick and choose what is relevant for Sarawak, what is the general, what is methodology, what are the gaps, what are the challenges, but we also want policy recommendations. What can we do differently? Okay, Mr. Ken, Dr. Ken.
Thank you. I thank you very much. Good morning again. I just wanted to thank you very much, Dr. Denison. I thought it was very interesting to tie it all together. I was struck by, I always thought that culturally, right, Datuk Rohani, Malaysia, we always use the term Nusantara, right, which means that we are actually a maritime, and yet we are destroying and reclaiming our oceans and rivers, and this has something to do with our idea of development also. So Dr. Denison, we always talk about development, so we talk about political economy, but I think another important concept that we should introduce, and I think even researchers and academics don't talk about, is moving from political economy to political ecology. I think that's a new field that needs to be talked about more. How do we insert multidimensionality into development planning so that we don't actually kill our history and our culture, where if our communities are based on rivers, all our kerajaan all started from rivers and muara sungai and all from the hulu sungai. And then we are now killing the rivers, we are putting sand in the rivers literally in our ocean. So I think that's a new area that we can explore together, and we can redefine. And I like what Afandi closed off with saying, community resilience means nothing if they are up against systematic exploitation. I think that's very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the comment, but I think the panelists will comment on your comment. Yeah? Thank you. Next, please. Well, all very quiet. Are you worried about your presentation? Who? Okay.
Yeah, I'm Soraya from Purple Lily. Okay, a very good presentation by all the panelists. But just one comment, maybe we should also consider about social development. It seems like the government doesn't really have the political will to educate the public, and it's, as you know, it's quite difficult for us to get data and all that. That is one way why people on the ground doesn't know much about climate change or whatever that affect their livelihood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Suraya. Next.
Good morning, and thank you to all the panelists for the presentation. So I have...
Name, please.
Oh, okay, Saraswati from AIMS University. I have a question on participatory budgeting. I think Mr. Afandi mentioned it. Okay, I just would like to know how feasible it is. I think Penang has tried it, but how feasible it is in Malaysia? Is other states in Malaysia doing it? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and whether other countries, gender budgeting can be thrown in as well. Okay, anyone else? Okay, Ms. Omna.
Hi, I'm Raine from Engender and CSO-SDG Alliance. I think what I'm about to say would seem like a truism. It's frustrating, right? When you look at all the DASA documents, it seems like we have a great plan. You know, when you look at all the DASA documents that we have, whether it's Kementerian Wanita or, you know, environment and so on, but then it is not being operationalized optimally. Nothing's being monitored optimally. So I'm wondering whether we need a legislation to prevent politically, you know, whenever there's government change or even at ministers. I know you did a great job, I don't mean you. But you know, even ministers or, you know, who come in to change or to deviate or distract the implementation of DASA. I think we also hear from officers, they're very frustrated. They don't know who to follow. KSU ke Menteri, you know what I mean? So I think to let the government be on track in implementing DASA, regardless of who is there. The KPI must be the extent to which they are. So I think that's where we get distracted, you know, constant distraction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, first round, and if you are still thinking through, can I start with Mel first? You don't need to answer all 4 questions. Take at least one lah.
Okay. So I would like to agree with Soraya on this sense though,
Okay.
on the difficulties for publics to get data. And actually, it resonates with what Dato' Hajah Hanifah has been telling us as well on the awareness of the publics on things like climate change, for example, is very limited. But also, from my experience in the field as well, it's not that the community doesn't know that this is happening. They experience it on their everyday livelihood situations, right? They actually know all of this, but I think there need to be a mechanism on how to consolidate what the public knows with the mechanism that is from high ups as well. So there need to be that, you know, that sambungan a bit lah. So I think there's a gap in that when it comes to this sort of awareness thing. Like I said, it's not that they didn't know, but because we are using terms that are and jargons that are difficult for them to be, that is not unrelatable to them lah. It's just in the sense of dia tak biasa lah, sort of that thing. But I would agree with you lah. There needs to be a more awareness on this matter, but also on policy level also there needs to be an awareness that they're not reaching out to the people on the ground as well. Yeah, thank you.
Anthony? Mike is there.
I'm in a WhatsApp group for people who are involved with energy efficiency. And whenever we read of a new roadmap or policy coming out, especially roadmaps, we say we're very happy that there's a new roadmap. The problem is we don't know where the roadmap is going to lead us. Whether it is whether to hell or to a road, what they call a dead end. And it has become very often that we find ourselves having a very good roadmap, but very bad implementation. Thank you.
I think I can answer, I will address all the comments and questions. First, Dr. Ken, talking of moving from political economy to political ecology. Actually, I don't know how that works, but I can say that what Malaysia, now we're still in the capitalistic based economic model. So probably the best chance that we have is to move a bit to green capitalism, if that even makes sense. So ISIS Malaysia, last year we create this idea called nature positive economy. So essentially what it means, I know it sounds very cliche and very corporate-like, but for our own definition, is to create a market for conservation in Malaysia. What does that mean is you need to create a system where state, government, private sector earn more money from replanting forests or conserving forests or habitats rather than clearing them. And that's not easy, but what you can do is put a very high price on pollution like carbon, biodiversity loss, pollution. So that incentivizes them to actually purchase something like carbon credits, biodiversity credits to conserve the forest. So imagine if PBT, right? Now they have a green lung, they force to clear it because they want to build a bangunan so they can earn all the revenue from cukai petak, cukai tanah, cukai pitu, all the cukai. But imagine if there's a way for project developer to come in and reforested the area, like a green space for public, and sell those, carbon can be one of them, but it can be payment for ecosystem service, can be biodiversity credits, right? But you have to put the price very high, right? So that they can sell it and you can earn more money. Like, so that's one way how I look at it. But there are also other way like, state capitation grant, for example. We amend that to include environmental performance as part of the state allocation federal to state, not just EFT, right? So if your river is polluted, then maybe you should earn less revenue. So that will change the behavior of the state government immediately. So that's one. On Suraya, your question about, I know data has always been an issue. I think it's very difficult to get government to share data, but I think one positive trend we're seeing here is more private sector, NGO, CSO, and public sharing citizen science data. And that's something we have to harness. For example, forests, I think, definitely Forestry Department won't publish the forest data, but at least now there are NGOs such as, Rimba Watch and all that, coming forward with their own data. Maybe you can question the validity of it, but at least it's a step to start, public discourse for CSOs and public to hold the government accountable. At least they know that, okay, this data exists, maybe you should do something to produce more data to counter that. And even data now is a big issue, not just in terms of policy, but trade. Right? We have the EU deforestation regulation because Malaysia cannot demonstrate that their forest deforestation rate. EU might just assume that, okay, Malaysia have a very high deforestation rate. So if we don't collect our data properly, we cannot even counter the narrative from the global north to the global south. On the participatory budgeting, actually on the slide, I don't know in terms of state level how much, but I know national level there's a lot of participatory budgeting. MOF have been calling a lot of discussion. But what I meant by that is more local level. So in terms of budget at PBT, I think the community should have a say in terms of the projects that directly have implication on them, and they can voice out, this is project that's important to me, I can be part of the process. On OMNA, in terms of, we have a lot of beautiful policy and plan, but from my experience, why policy in Malaysia always fail? I really don't think policy in Malaysia is beautifully written. I think it's written a lot of Madhu statement, but why it's weak is because two things. Most policies doesn't have a clear policy target and doesn't have a clear policy instruments to get there. So when you set a target, you have to decide what's the instrument you want to achieve that. For example, you want to include recycling target. Yeah. What is the instrument? Is it regulatory? Is it market-based? Is it information, just awareness? I think government prefer information instrument because it's easier politically. Just do awareness program and all that. But really what changes is actually regulatory, right? You put a price on plastic. You put a price on pollution. That will change the whole market actors to shift towards what behavior you want. Another one, I don't know how much I can say this, but ISIS recently we helped to write the National Policy on Climate Change 2.0. And again, we have our version and the government have their own version and we have to work together. But what I realized is they want it to be key actions and target to be as flexible as possible. No hard targets, no hard regulation. Why? Because they said, so every time there's new politicians or government came in, it's flexible for implementation. And here I am thinking that policy should be very clear, very strong, based on science and evidence, so that any politicians can come in, cannot change the target. And we have one way, right? Even the new climate change bill, apparently the minister now have power to set our own GHG emission reduction targets. Without any feedback, he alone can set the power. So imagine, now we have a new minister that is pro-climate. So imagine if we have someone else that came in and said, I don't believe in climate change, let's just scrap the target. So that's a very dangerous precedent, so yeah.
Can I just comment about, I wanted to actually expound a bit on the Solid Waste Management Act, or Act 673. Only half of the state governments have adopted this act, which means there should be waste separation at source, at your home or in businesses or factories. The sad reality is the states that adopted failed. The states that have not adopted are succeeding. I give you the example of Selangor and Penang. They have not adopted Act 673, but they have started to incorporate separation of waste in households. How are they successful? They have spent a lot on SEPA, a lot on education. Right? I wrote a case study of the waste separation done by MPPJ in PJ to gated and gutted communities. Of course, gated and gutted, there's much more control. But it came to a point where the director of public affairs from Nestle that was sponsoring this came and met the public to explain to them why Nestle is spending this money to do waste separation. And this was not done in Malacca, was not done in Johor. So in Malacca, what they did is they gave separate plastic bags for people to keep different waste, and another smaller plastic bag for organic waste. And you get fined if you mix things around. It was okay for maybe the first 6 months. After that, people forgot it. They issued fines, and being Malaysia, you wait until you get a discount, then you pay. So what happened in Malacca and Johor? The corporations gave up. They are no longer issuing fines, and you can throw your garbage as you like. So enforcement needs to be preceded by education. Thank you.
You know, it's very interesting, Anthony, that when I went to Chennai or Madras, they banned plastic. You know? And you can't use plastic, or no shop will give you plastic. People would think India very unruly traffic, all that, and how they managed to enforce it. No? It's unbelievable that Chennai, you can't get plastic, because I wanted to buy muruku and they gave it in a paper bag. I said, by the time I reach KL, it will be habis already. Hancho, you know? They said, no, nothing doing. You have to bring your own plastic if you want it. Okay, anyone else with a final question or thought? We still, anyone else? Wabi, Datuk Rohani, you want to make a comment?
I have a comment.
Yeah, Sila.
But I think it's more, it's like getting all this data, and who do you pass it to? This is the role of APPGM-SDG. Now, I did it when I was the chairman. You know, a lot of problems that you manage to solve on the ground or not able to solve from the ground, I always tell the Wakil Rakyat, the MPs, please debate it in Parliament, because that is the best way for you to bring this localized problem up direct to policymakers. Otherwise, it'll just be your level, you know. Sometimes your level, okay, you get to write books, that kind of thing. How many will get it? But I told Wakil Rakyat, the MPs, and even the Adun, I tried to bring in the Adun, but that level I was just the MP. So I said, bring up. And I think it was very good, and I became the only person in Dewan Rakyat that talks on SDG. And Tok Pa likes it, because Tok Pa has the chance to answer, because he was the minister. So it's like between me and Tok Pa. And then remember, Tok Pa was even asking me, Rohani, please solve the problem by the MP, remember? Dr. Denison. And then I quickly...
We solved it over chapati.
I know, and I quickly WhatsApp to you. I say, you tell the YB, don't ask me to answer. I cannot answer. I'm another fellow YB. You know, but minister to answer. But Tok Pa was like joking. So what I mean to say, there are a lot of things that you manage to gather from your mapping, from solution providers, but they don't get up to the policy makers. But the bridge, actually, very important bridge, is actually wakil rakyat, the MPs. So you tell them, you give them some pointers, like one thing about YBs lah. You give pointers and then maybe they'll incorporate in their speech. That is good to bring up. And if they can't even pinpoint which ministry, it's okay. They just talk generally. It's the ministries that will be picking up. And I was so surprised, the points that I brought up, it was picked up by several ministries. And it was very good because sikit sebanyak in their policy direction, at least you have real example. And I just want to share here, actually, that was when our APPGM report got into the VNR of, and then bawa ke United Nations. And only then our report was taken up. Because they said finally they got a report, not the ordinary laporan, laporan tahunan, but suddenly they found a real report with real examples from the ground and they love it. In fact, Datuk, when we were in UN, a lot of MPs came to me, MP sana. How did you manage to do it? So we said we did policy mapping by parliamentary areas. So we were very specific. We go to parliamentary areas, even though they will tell us a lot of problems, but because we are limited by the budget, and then you pick maybe 3 main ones. But those 3 main ones actually is a big problem, Remember, we got about fishermen's problem, we have flooding, we even came up with, you remember, they asked us to make roads, but who are we, APPGM? But that is the whole idea. They talk to us because they want us to bring it up. So I was telling the YBs, the Wakil Rakyat, you are in a very good position to really bring up your people's problem because it's real problem. And I hope they still do it.
Sure.
And they bring up. And then it's okay, you bring up. You don't even have to pinpoint which ministry, which one to take this up. You just talk generally. These are the problems faced by my people, blah, 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 blah. And later you'll listen. A lot of ministries will bangkit, to answer. And
Thank you.
hopefully another way, Datuk, you are in that council, right? You know SDG council?
Now,
The big one.
Yeah,
Remember, we were called one time. So the big one is where you bring up, very sensitive issues, which maybe it was not really properly taken up, even in parliament level, but you bring up on policy direction.
Sure. Thank you.
Like a few things people were talking, how important the storytelling
True.
can lead you to. And
Thank
this might be to save our planet at the same time. Okay, thank you. It's just an observation. It's just a way of how you can bring even very localized problems right to the very top. Actually, the important bridge is the representative, because they are actually voted by the people, so they should be bring up the problems of the people. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Dato', I wish you were still in government. It would have been much easier to negotiate with cabinet. Tapi, thank you very much for that intervention. I agree. Let me just conclude by thanking the 3 speakers. Let's give them a hand. To the sort of 5 people who made interventions, including Dato', thank you. Let's give them a hand. Let me just close with 2 points. One is that on October the 15th, Dr. Su, Dr. Ken, Dr. Khairil from our MySDG Center for Social Inclusion are launching 8 policy documents in Parliament at 12:30. Now, these documents rose from our mapping reports, and then there were discussions with members of Parliament in the earlier parliamentary session. And then in July session, they had the discussion with government agencies. and then they have put this Laporan Awal, which will be released on the 15th, which takes on the ongoing discussion with government agencies and others on critical topics like poverty, environment, food security, welfare, statelessness. And these books that we are bringing out are complementing the evidence-based approach. So that's an important move, Dato'. Now more MPs are speaking on SDG. And I think, Ken, do you know the number of MPs who were involved in the RTDs? Roughly 20, 30. About 30 MPs, because they co-chair each of the 8 groups. And we are the only people who have brought out poverty and small island. I read the report on it. Finally, in this session, I think from what Fendi and even Anthony and Mel have brought out, I think it's the role of public intellectuals. I know many academics and researchers are here, as well as people from civil society and members of parliament as public intellectuals to continue to influence public opinion, not just politicians, public opinion, because politicians are fearful of voters. So get the voter, you get your MP, but more than the MP, get his voter. And if the voter sets it as a priority, we would see it ongoing. So with those words, thank you. I think we are 2 or 3 minutes over time. Thank you very much for this panel, and we look forward to all the other presentations. Thank you.